Speaker. It is always an honor and a privilege to rise in this House and speak to Canadians about the hard work the Minister of Finance is doing for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. The motion says sunshine is the best disinfectant, and that's why on October 19, 2015, after 10 years of cloudy skies, people in Canada voted for real change and let the sun shine in. And let me repeat that again. Let the sun shine in, Mr. Speaker. And, we've been clear right from the beginning that the economy needs to work for the middle class and those working hard to join it. This is a must. See, my parents immigrated to this country because they knew in this country there was rules. And as long as you followed those rules and you worked really hard, you could be successful. And that's why we've had a clear focus to ensure that hope and hard work succeeds for Canadians all across this country. First, we introduced a middle-class tax cut, which continues to benefit nearly 9 million Canadians. Then we introduced the Canada Child Benefit, which has lifted hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. Compared to the previous system, where child benefits were not targeted and were given to millionaires, the CCB is an after-tax targeted benefit that is helping a lot of families, including in my riding of Brampton East, which almost $10 million has been given to Canadian families in need of additional assistance. And in the fall economic update, in the fall economic statement, Minister of Finance announced the government's intention to accelerate the indexation of the CCB by 2 years earlier to July 2018. This simply means better support sooner to ensure the CCB continues to play a vital role in helping low and middle income Canadian families with children. Mr. Speaker, this was announced less than a month ago, and I had the honor and privilege of hosting the Right Honourable Prime Minister in my riding. He met with families in my riding that had young children who thanked him for the investments in families and the Canada Child Benefit. It was a great day, and I always encourage, every time I get up in this House, to invite all members to my riding because it's a wonderful place. Especially you, Mr. Speaker. We run basketball camps on Sundays. I want to see you there and shoot some hoops with the people in Brampton East. Moving right along, it was also announced that the government's historical agreement with provinces to enhance the Canada Pension Plan at maturity. It will increase the maximum retirement benefit about 50%. In today's dollars, that represents an increase of nearly $7,000 to a maximum benefit of around $20,000. And with the recent action by the Government of Quebec to enhance the Quebec Pension Plan in a similar fashion to the CPP, Canadians from coast to coast to coast can now look forward to a safer, more dignified retirement. See, Mr. Speaker, our government knows that those working hard to join the middle class can face financial barriers to joining or rejoining the workforce. That's why, as part of our agreement to enhance the Canada Pension Plan, we increased the working income tax benefit. Because the economy is growing, we are doing even more to help those working to join the middle class. And in the fall economic statement, the government announced its intentions to further enhance the WITB by an additional $500 million per year. This will provide even greater support to current recipients and will ensure more workers can qualify. In the fall economic statement, the government also announced its plan to reduce the small business tax rate. By doing this, the government is helping small business grow and create jobs. The small business rate will be lowered to 10% just 5 weeks from now, and then to 9% from a year from now in 2019. This means up to $7,500 in federal corporate tax savings per year to help entrepreneurs and innovators do what they do best. Small businesses are a key driver of our economy and are cornerstone of our communities across this country. As our plan works to grow the economy, small businesses see the benefit of what growth with lower taxes delivers. As we lower taxes on small businesses, we are committed to ensuring low taxes support businesses, business growth, and investment, and not give personal tax advantages to the wealthy over the middle class. See, Mr. Speaker, we inherited a system that encourages wealthy individuals to incorporate in order to pay less tax. This means someone making $300,000 can save about as much on tax as the average Canadian who earns $48,000. We are making changes to address tax advantages that only the richest individuals using high-priced accountants can take advantage of. We have listened to small business owners, professional farmers, and fishers, and we will move forward in a way that protects small businesses, protects the middle class, and innovators and entrepreneurs. But there is more. Budget 2017 also laid out the government's plan to invest $81 billion over 11 years in public transit, green and social infrastructure, transportation infrastructure that supports trade and rural and northern communities.
Order. The honourable member for Edmonton West on a point of order.
And you allow a lot of leeway, but there's issue of relevance here. It has not once discussed the motion in front of us today.
I know this has been a topic that this is a point of order rather that has occurred earlier in the day, and members will know, of course, that the standing orders are clear on the issue of relevance. I note that the member is 6 minutes into his 20 minutes speech, and he did cite one phrase from the motion. I will certainly, for the honourable member's benefit and others for that matter, members agreeably are given a considerable latitude in coming around to the motion that's before the House. I think it's important, it's difficult, I should say, for chair occupants to, of course, one cannot judge relevance until such time as the members had an opportunity to, in fact, present their arguments. And so sufficient time needs to transpire until we see where indeed the member is going. What I would say is that what is important is that before the member presents a continuation or a theme of arguments, shall I say, it would be good to introduce at the outset of that how those particular set of arguments apply to the question that's before the House, and he may want to think of that and incorporate that into it. I'm not here to tell him how to frame his arguments, but certainly that would be one way to make that relevance connection. The honourable member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel like I'm back in law school, so thank you so much for the lesson on how to present an argument. I must say that the honourable colleague on his point of order said that I wasn't being relevant, but the fact of the matter is the first 6 minutes was just my preamble. I was getting to it. And, and we started off by saying that sunshine is the best disinfectant. And I just want to say that, the Ethics Commissioner has a role to play, and we all respect the Ethics Commissioner, and she's doing a great job ensuring that all members of this House, including ministers, including the Prime Minister, even including opposition members, members on the backbench, members of the third party, independent members, are held to high ethical standards. And the Ethics Commissioner's job is to, all members are elected to this House by great Canadians, and they sit down with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that they're on side and don't have any conflicts of interest with their government and parliamentary work. See, the Minister of Finance proactively sat down with the Ethics Commissioner when he was elected as the MP for Toronto Centre, and then subsequently appointed as the Minister of Finance. And he followed her advice. He set up a conflict screen, and he went forward building a stronger economy for Canadians. And that's simply what the matter is. There's a set of rules. The minister followed those rules. He met with the Ethics Commissioner. She provided a recommendation. He followed that recommendation, and he went on to build a great economy in the last 2 years. And that's the problem. The issue is, and I get it, when I was in opposition, I was just an innocent bystander, and I've had the great fortune of being in politics since I was 19, volunteering. And when you're on the opposite side of government, it's frustrating, especially being on the opposite side of our government that has the fastest growing economy in the G7, that's created 500,000 new jobs, that's cut taxes for the middle class, that's reduced taxes for small businesses, that's increased the Canada Child Benefit and lifted 300,000 children out of poverty. I mean, Mr. Speaker, of course you're going to find things to talk about, but even if they're not relevant, I mean, they love to talk about relevancy. I mean, the Ethics Commissioner did her job. The Minister of Finance followed her recommendation and now is focused on Canadians and ensuring that Canadians from coast to coast to coast have the opportunity to work hard and succeed. And that's what we're focused on, and they can focus on the opposition, you know, trying to distract us, but it's not going to work. We've seen this song and dance before, Mr. Speaker, and that's why the sunny days started on October 19, 2015, and they will continue for years to come. With the budget, the government showed its commitment to put together a new housing strategy and to help ensure that Canadians have more affordable housing that meets their needs. Just yesterday, the Right Honourable Prime Minister and the Minister of Social Development announced how this will make housing more affordable for Canadians. Canada's first ever national housing strategy is a 10-year, $40 billion plan that will give Canadians a place to call home. It will promote diverse communities and will build housing that is sustainable and accessible. Mr. Speaker, all of the government's investments to date are having a real impact on Canadians, a real impact on our economy. The Canadian economy, the fastest growing economy of G7 countries. How come the opposition never likes to talk about that? The Canadian economy has created over 500,000 jobs since our government was elected in 2015. You know, I'm hearing a little bit of heckling from my NDP colleagues, so I'd love to remind them that the Canada Child Benefit, which directly helped lift 300,000 children out of poverty, is something that that party voted against. And until they can come full circle and realize that they actually voted against middle-class tax policies, they really should not throw stones when they live in a glass house. Among young Canadians, the unemployment rate is at the lowest on record. Labor market participation among working-age women is at an all-time high. Canada has the lowest net-to-GDP ratio of the G7. According to projections by private sector economists, the federal debt-to-GDP ratio could be just 5 years from now at its lowest level in 40 years. Mr. Speaker, our plan is working, but we're not done yet. As we look forward to the future, our next federal budget, the government remains focused on how best to grow the Canadian economy, how to make sure that growth benefits all Canadians. That means continuing to make smart investments in people and communities to ensure continued progress for the middle class and invest.
Order. Order. The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I hate to raise it again, but my colleague assured all of us that he was just in his preamble earlier when he had not yet referred to the motion before us, other than that one phrase. So, Mr. Speaker, I would ask you to call my colleague to order.
I thank the honourable member for, again, bringing this to the attention of the House, and I just ask the honourable member for Brampton East to bring his commentary around to the motion in front of the House. We've got about call it 6.5 minutes remaining, and I'm sure he'll do his best to do just that. The honourable member for Brampton East.
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. I'd love to repeat myself and Mr. Speaker, again, the honourable member from York Simcoe, you know, should speak when he's spoken to, and more importantly, he has opportunities to rise in this House and ask a question in 6.5 minutes. I look forward to him rising and asking me a question, and I'd be happy to answer it. But more importantly, I want to say that the Ethics Commissioner is appointed to a role with a mandate to ensure that no member of Parliament, whether backbencher, whether minister, whether the Prime Minister, whether independent members of Parliament, all 338 of us that serve in this House, that are honourable members, that are duly elected in a democracy. The Ethics Commissioner's role is to ensure that nobody violates conflicts of interest. It's a job and a mandate that she's independent of this House of Commons, which we respect that. The honourable member from Toronto Centre was elected, was appointed as Minister of Finance, met with the Ethics Commissioner proactively. She wrote to him instructions. He followed those instructions. And then he focused on building a stronger economy for Canadians. And I understand why the opposition doesn't want to talk about that, because it's nothing but good news on the economy, Mr. Speaker. Again and again and again. You know why? Because the unemployment rate is going down, more jobs are being created. 500,000 jobs, 500,000 jobs. The strongest growth rate in 10 years. And that's why my colleagues on the other side of the House keep on coming up with fancy words and wordplay and try to distract Canadians. Well, they're not going to distract our government. They're not going to divide us. That's the politics of the Harper regime. We're focused on sunny ways, and we know sunshine is the best disinfectant, and that's why we're focusing on growing a strong economy, Mr. Speaker. And that's why it means we got to make continually smart investments in people and communities to ensure continued progress for the middle class, and investing in lifelong learning to give Canadians the tools they need. It also means ensuring that the government policy and budget decisions considers impacts on all genders and advance gender equality. Mr. Speaker, I think I've tabled all the proof that we need. I think I've tabled more proof than we need that the Minister of Finance and the Government of Canada are doing a great job for Canadians. Since coming into office, Minister Martineau has focused on improving the lives of the middle class. Minister of Finance has focused on improving the lives of the middle class. Under his leadership, we will continue to ensure that Canadians who work hard will have an opportunity to succeed. We ensure that we protect the most vulnerable people in our society, and we ensure that no matter what, that we give an opportunity for all Canadians from coast to coast to coast to achieve their very own Canadian dream. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had told that member that if he said nice things to Maclean's about me, that I wouldn't ask him tough questions anymore. But I've got to renege on that deal. I'm sorry. That member is a friend, though, so I will do him this credit. I'll say that if the Prime Minister is looking for a new finance minister sometime soon, he might consider the member for Brampton East, and I look forward to responding to his invitation to again come to Brampton East. I have to tell you, it is one of my favorite places to knock on doors. There is such a positive response to the Conservative message in Brampton East. I just love going there again and again, and I can assure you that I'll continue to do that. Now, the member did not, frankly, say much about the ethical failures of the finance minister. He did talk about some other issues related to the economy. He should know that under Stephen Harper, Canada had the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio, the best economic growth record, and the best job creation record of the G7. And here's another critical difference. Stephen Harper had a plan to balance the budget, and we got to balance budget. And we did it through a recession. But can I ask the member in particular about the issue of the small business tax cut? This government promised to follow through on what the Conservatives were already doing, which was to continue to move the small business tax rate to 9%. Then they reneged on that promise. And then, in response to strong advocacy for small business by the official opposition, the finance minister said, actually, that promise is back on. It's still in the future, but it's back on. Can I ask the member, is this a promise that they're going to renege on again? Is this on-again, off-again plans for the future, something that the member for Brampton East wants to address?
Here, here.
Honourable member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member is a friend, and those comments that were made of him in Maclean's were true and honest, and I congratulate him on the award that he received and for the good work that he's doing for his constituents. I do welcome him back to Brampton East. The more he comes, the more my margin of victory increases. So I consider it a bonus if he comes by Brampton East. I hope he comes more often. Getting to the member's question, he spoke about the small business tax rate. We on this side of the House understand that small businesses need a strong economy. We are reducing the small business tax rate from 10 to 9%, and we look forward to doing that for small businesses. But at the same time, we're making investments in infrastructure, we're making investments in communities, we're making investments in families that benefit the small businesses that we're all trying to ensure that they do very, very well. And that's why they benefit from the fastest growing economy in the G7. That's why they benefit from the 500,000 jobs being created. That's why they benefit from the Canada Child Benefit to ensure that 300,000 children are lifted out of poverty. That's why they benefit from the further indexation of the Canada Child Benefit. So, it's always nice to agree with the honourable member that small business tax rate should be at 9%, and I look forward to hosting him and his growing family in my riding very soon. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so I just want to get this straight. The finance minister, when he got elected, he put his $21 million in Morneau Chappelle shares into a numbered company in Alberta. And that company has made $5 million since he's been elected. In fact, his investments grew, what we've learned, 5% the day that Bill C-27 was tabled that benefited Morneau Chappelle. So I've got some questions for the member here, because he says that he seems to think that this is okay, that the recommendations were made by the Ethics Commissioner. So maybe he can clarify, did the Ethics Commissioner recommend to the Finance Minister that he take his Morneau Chappelle shares, put them in Alberta, in a numbered company, and use this loophole so that he could protect his assets? Because it'd be nice to get clarification on this. And another thing, Mr. Speaker, while I'm at it, I'd like him to tell me that people in his riding, has anyone said to him that they think this is ethical and this is okay?
The honourable member for Brampton East.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question. The honourable member mentioned that, this is what happened. But in fact, I've already mentioned that the member from Toronto Centre was elected in the 2015 election. He was subsequently appointed as Minister of Finance. He met with the Ethics Commissioner, which governs all members of Parliament, except for maybe the leader of the NDP, who's not a member of Parliament yet. But otherwise, all MPs are governed. All MPs are governed by the Ethics Commissioner. And the Minister of Finance was provided by recommendations. Recommendations were followed. The rule of law was maintained. And that's why the Minister of Finance has been focused on growing the economy. And I understand why the NDP can't stand that, because at the end of the day, we're actually making contributions and helping families. And people in Brampton East are really happy with me. And you're more than welcome to come to my riding and participate in 2019. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Brampton East for his comments. Mr. Speaker, Confucius is known to say that real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. And I would like to know from this, to get some real knowledge, because the real knowledge that we do know is that the conflict of interest rules of the federal legislature state that techniques to control your methods of available control for conflicts of interest are disclosure. We know the minister didn't do that. Avoidance. We know the minister didn't do that. And withdrawal, or which really means recusal. And the minister appears to not have done that either. I wonder if the member would actually, Mr. Speaker, actually comment on the question today which pertains to these issues.
Honourable member for Brampton East.
I just don't understand why the opposition doesn't get it. The Ethics Commissioner is appointed to ensure all members of Parliament follow the rules. The member from Toronto Centre got elected. He got appointed into cabinet. He met with the Ethics Commissioner. The Ethics Commissioner gave him advice. He followed that advice, and he went on to focus on growing the economy, covering his mandate as the Minister of Finance, ensuring that we had the fastest growing economy in the G7. So again, the members opposite can keep focusing on what they got to focus on. We're going to focus on Canadian families, and the Minister of Finance is doing a great job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Mississauga Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I'd like to thank my colleague from Brampton East for his excellent speech and for his passion and energy and his public service. Mr. Speaker, today's motion really is a product of the ideological residue of the former regime, Mr. Speaker. The previous government refused to believe that investments would pay off, refused to give Canadians credit for the idea that when we invest in them, they would do well. These are social investments, these are economic investments that we've made, that the Minister of Finance really is putting forward forward with the same passion reflected by my colleague from Brampton East, the same passion for public service. I'd like to ask my colleague, when he goes door knocking in his riding, what he hears about the work of our Minister of Finance, his commitment to public service, and the compound effect of the investments that my colleague described so well that we have made in Canadians, in social structures, and in our economic future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question, and it gives me an opportunity to talk about the people of Brampton East, the fine people that gave me an opportunity to come serve in this House and achieve my very own Canadian dream. When I go door knocking on a weekly basis, when I talk to my constituents, they're supportive of the direction of our government. They appreciate the small business tax cut. They appreciate the Canada Child Benefit, which is more money after tax to more families that need it. They appreciate the national housing strategy to ensure that all Canadians can have access to affordable housing. They appreciate our work to grow the fastest economy in the G7. They appreciate our investments in infrastructure that are making a difference in the lives of citizens in Brampton. They appreciate that we understand that their voices are being heard in Ottawa, as opposed to 10 years where only Ottawa's messages were being pushed down to Brampton. And that's why they are supportive of not only the Liberal Party government, but ensure their own member of parliament that's always been accessible to them, that always ensures that no matter what, I will never forget that they gave me an opportunity to serve, and I will always be there to fight for their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
We've got time just for one very short question and response. The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, I'm sitting here listening to this arrogance that's dripping from the other side. And I'm very curious if when there's knocking on doors that people who have public pensions, people who are part of organized labour, are telling this member how much they love C-27 and how much they love that their ministers put this on the table. But I'll ask one quick question, and I do understand why the member doesn't want to stay on topic, doesn't want to answer a question, because to be quite honest, it's indefensible. So here's a question, and I would like the answer yes or no from this member. My question is very simple. When this member ran in 2015, did he promise his voters that a Liberal finance minister would take advantage of an ethical rule loophole, all the while misleading everyone into believing his assets were in a blind trust? Yes or no?
The honourable member for Brampton East.
Thank you to my honourable colleague for the question. And the beauty of being the member from Brampton East is that the honourable member can just go ask her own leader what Brampton East is all about, because he was knocking doors against me consistently in 2015, and you know what happened, Mr. Speaker? Well, I got 52% of the vote, and I think they got like 22% of the vote. And so the question, honestly, the people of Brampton East, what they want, and what all Canadians from coast to coast to coast want, even in their ridings, is a stronger economy, and that's exactly what we're delivering for Canadians, is a stronger middle class, a better Canada Child Benefit, and I welcome the honourable member to my riding whenever she wants to come out, and I'd love to go door knocking with her. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It was very hard to discern what was actually